What's up, you filthy animals?
How's my buddies over at the R2 Sonic Campfire doing today?
Never well. Keep them warm.
Oh man.
You guys should come. You're my good luck charms, man. I always catch fish with you guys.
Is there room on the bus?
Because I look at you guys, and the 8 or 9 of you guys impress me a lot. You know, because I first ran. Okay. You know.
No, go on.
You guys.
I don't do advertising. You're not going to see me on billboards or in newspapers, classifieds, none of that. Well, yeah, there's that because, you know, you guys are awesome. But,
Yeah, well, that's comforting to know in case I say something stupid.
No, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You're hearing it.
That's kind of our thing, so don't step on our turf.
Yeah, come on, man.
Oh man, I hope I don't.
What we're saying is actually news, so that's why we're fumbling a little bit, but it's going to sound amazing.
And we are back. This is Rutten River Pursuits Podcast. And this is the Sonic Campfire. We are reality outdoor radio, where our mission is to get you outdoors by connecting you to the people, skills, and products that you can trust.
You can trust them.
Hey, everybody, it's Bucky. Who do I have with me tonight?
I'm Catfish. I'm Steve.
I'm Will.
And I'm excited.
Really?
Yeah, we're changing it up. We are springing forward, I guess, if you will, guys. Right? Stevie talked to Mr. Joe Raymond from Susquehanna Smallmouth Guides.
Another great guest host.
Yeah. Got him off the river for a few hours for us tonight.
How'd you do that?
Magic.
So before, let's just get him on the phone, guys, because we've got a lot to talk about tonight.
Joe, you there?
I'm here.
Welcome.
Welcome, Joe.
We had Joe on last January, I believe, January 2019.
About a year ago.
Yeah.
Just a little over.
Yeah. Yep.
Did you fish today? I know when we talked last January, you had been on the river that day.
Nah, I haven't been on the water since the end of December, to be honest. Yeah, I think last time we did this, it was probably the middle of December. It might have been January. I think it was right before I went up to the St. Lawrence, actually.
You had just pulled your boat off the river that day or something like that, or the day before. Yeah, so it was...
But I've had all kinds of projects going on this winter. Since we talked last, I've been spoiled by the St. Lawrence River.
Really?
And,
we hear such crazy great things about that place.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's a pretty cool place. It's special. I mean, the Susquehanna River is special, but you know, if you ever get a chance to go up there, if anybody ever invites you up, you got to take them up on it.
Are you guiding up there, Joe?
Yeah, that's one of the projects I was working on this winter, is getting my captain's license. So I took the test, and actually I just sent the paperwork in, and I should have it back in, I don't know, within a month, as long as all my paperwork's right. But I don't know if you've ever talked to anybody that's had to do that, you know, take the captain's course test.
Yeah.
But it is crazy. I mean, it was 3 weekends in a row. I drove to Jersey, did a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You have to log, I think it's a total of 56 hours in class, and then pass. There's 4 different tests. Each test has 50 questions, and it was one of the hardest things I ever had to do in my life.
Really?
I mean, it was, there's rules of the road, navigation, chart plotting, and deck safety.
Yeah.
And I mean, the amount of knowledge that they want you to absorb to, you know, be able to pass that test is just, it's pretty wild. But I did pass it, and then getting all the paperwork together. I mean, it's getting, I guess because it, you know, it goes through the Coast Guard and it's federal, just the amount of paperwork you have to submit. I had to get a TWIC card. I had to go get a special drug test. I had to go get a special physical. All kinds of background checks. I mean, this pack of paper that I sent in to get this thing, mean, I just screwed around for hours and hours and hours, just checking, making sure everything was signed. But we got it.
That's good.
Hopefully I don't hear anything bad back.
Well, it's easier to get a hold of nuclear missile silo codes than to get your captain's license.
But I would think that attests to the fact that a captain can marry a couple once you get into international waters or whatnot. I mean,
can they?
Yeah, like they're a highly specialized group, and the only reason why I'm remotely even knowledgeable about any of this is Podfather Ron. His career was in the Merchant Marines,
right,
in the Great Lakes, and I spent 48 hours of RV travel time with him. And I picked his brain that entire time, just about his. Yeah, because I found
how can I get married in the maritime?
Well, but I just found it fascinating, and he even. You have to take a first mate's test or a second mate's test even when you're in the Merchant Marine. It's just it's
they
incredible.
Teach you like the vows
so
that they have
Joe,
to say.
Good on you, bud, to validate what you have gone through. Having taken a standardized test, I'm a nurse. Just like you guys, the rad techs have taken the nationalized standardized test. They're not easy.
Well, here's
These
the
are
thing.
not easy.
It's true. People don't give it credit to have a captain's license on what it takes. Just like being a rad tech, people don't realize you have to study radiations of physics. It's not an easy class to study something that you can't see.
Can you marry people next to an X-ray machine?
I can marry somebody while they're being irradiated. And that's the only time.
You have people's lives in your hands.
It's very, very impressive to be called captain.
And then captains, think about the infrastructure. They have some of them have very large vessels navigating through seaports and that's, you jack that up. That's an economy.
I think the guys that are driving them cruise boats right now, though, are taking online testing. Because they ain't got such a good.
But
it's amazing. It really is the amount of knowledge that they want you to absorb with light signals and sound signals, and the difference between international and inland rules, and it's chart plotting. I don't know if you've ever seen like an actual navigation chart where you have to do like 3-point fixes and everything like that.
Yep.
I actually did all right with that. The hardest thing was rules of the road. That's what they call it. It's more rules of the water, but just knowing all those sound signals, like it's a lot to absorb. It's I don't know. Maybe when I was younger, it would have sunk in a lot easier, but I just had to read it over and over and over and over again. And still, it was like, man, when it comes time to take the test,
how long did it take you to actually study for it?
Oh, I had the 56 hours in class or whatever, and I was studying every night for an hour or two, just watching videos. There's actually a lot of helpful information on YouTube. There's a guy who has I guess he runs a captain's course, and then he has videos online that help you study. Didn't help so much with the rules of the road, but really with the navigation. Yeah. I had a really hard time following the instructor. I mean, just with the math and everything, like there's 12 students in the class, and everybody is lost and confused when it was being explained. And then, she would go around and help some people, and some people would get it, some people wouldn't. Then she'd move forward, and, before you know it, you're lost.
It sounds like studying Epic. Epic's the same way, or computer.
Without the YouTube videos, I would have been really screwed, especially with the, the chart plotting and all that navigation. That would have been really difficult, but we got through it. I mean, that's what, for this year, I'm going to guide the first 2 months on the Susquehanna, March and April, and then the last week of April, I'm pulling out and going to New York.
Nice.
No way.
There's a lot of charter people moving on right now because of, I hate to say it, but there are ups and downs of our great Susquehanna River. And I have an old tournament partner who doesn't guide anymore here. He guides on the Potomac, and later he goes to up by Watertown, New York. And he has, I believe he just put on the water like a 28-foot cabin cruiser from whatever, Northwest. It's a big riverboat.
Sure.
But it's Here's the thing. Maybe we can dive into this a little bit. When I was a kid,
spelunk away, bud.
I grew up in Altoona, which is roughly 2 hours away from our favorite fishing hole up at Liverpool in the Susquehanna River, and my dad's favorite place. My Uncle Rusty, my Uncle Hank, my father would throw me in an 18-foot V-hull with a whatever was on it, 9.9 something beat up prop. And we would drive down here every couple weekends and fish for bass. Now, I was young, very young. You know, you stand up in a V-hull like that, you could barely see over top the rails. But there was nothing to catch 100 bass a day when Ed back nothing. And as time went on, when I got through into high school, the Susquehanna River had all but virtually died. People were not excited to go out and fish for nothing.
Right.
And then, so years go on, I go through college, I come out of college, and I move down to the area of Gettysburg, and now I'm a half an hour or less from the river, 20 minutes. And this is, 10 years ago, 9 years ago, the river had make a comeback, and 5 years ago, it was on fire. It was nothing to catch those numbers of fish again, just wet wading. Right. You didn't even need a boat.
Yep.
And nowadays, it seems we're on that decline again, and it's unfortunate as far as numbers of smallmouth in the Susquehanna River. And we could pin this hypothetically. We could pin this on multiple outlets, and
right.
If we could touch on some of those, because you probably are one of the best people to help with this, spending the majority of your life on the river, and you've seen changes firsthand. When we let off with you, we let off with high water levels, lots of rain, silty water.
Most of the year was high water.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been interesting. And it going into decline the way it has been, that direction that it's heading in, that's part of the reason why I did get the captain's license to be able to move around. But yeah, it's, a year ago, a little over a year ago when we talked, the beginning of I would say starting off in the beginning of 2018, it was awesome. The beginning of 2018 was phenomenal. March, April, we were, it wasn't hard. Everybody was very happy at the end of the day. We had multiple trips, over 100 fish. I think the highest number day we had was like 147.
Wow.
And that was in 6 hours. Yeah, I mean, it was unbelievable. And then in July, at the end of July, we got that first high water event.
Right.
Where the river went up to 17 feet on the Harrisburg gauge. Yeah. And a lot of the fish got pushed in tributaries and pockets and, different areas. And it made it still continued. We had really high numbered fish days because they all got concentrated in these areas. But as the year went on, it seemed like the fish just never really got far away from those areas because the river never went down to a normal level. Like you'd go 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and all of a sudden you'd get more rain and it would go back up to 10 feet. And it was just up and down and up and down. And it seemed like every time it started to go down, like you'd go out and you'd start to fish the mid-river stuff, and we were starting to miss fish. I knew that something was going on. I didn't know exactly. I just had I had a feeling something was going on. Sure. Numbers just started to go down.
Well, when you're living it, you can see, you have a finger on the pulse, obviously.
Yeah. And then, the beginning of this year, or beginning of 2019, I expected it to be tough, and spring of 2019 was the toughest spring I ever had on the river. But we still had high water. The fish weren't really in the creeks like you would expect them to be. The mid-river stuff wasn't fishing great. At the beginning of April, we had a couple good days. It finally started to drop down around 5 feet where the mid-river stuff started to come back into play, and we did all right, but it still wasn't. It wasn't like anything like it was previous years. I mean, customers were still happy for the most part, still better than anywhere else in the area.
Right.
But, we just were battling with the high water, and all the way till I fished the Susquehanna until the second week in May. And at that point, I mean, I was starting to get burnt out on it just because of the water being up and down and up and down, and it was really fishing small. There's still a lot of people going out, a lot of traffic, and everybody was, there's no secrets out there anymore. Everybody's piling in these, what are now community holes, and it just was making it tough. So I got an invite to go up and fish in New York with actually a Native American on a territory that they have up there, which borders the St. Lawrence River, and there's tributaries up there. And I was only really supposed to go up there for 2 days. I was just going to go up for Saturday and Sunday, and then that, a couple days before, I knew that there was high water coming down here again, and I was probably going to have to call off trips. And Will Clute, he's my buddy up there, the Native American. He basically said, "Why don't you just bring a couple guys up here and do some trips up here?" And being up there on his territory, as long as I have their blessing, I didn't need to go through the normal hoops that you'd have to go through to be able to guide on like the public water,
right?
Or do things right on the public water. When you're up on their territory, you go by their rules.
Yeah, they're the law.
So it ended up just being an awesome opportunity.
Cool.
And I talked my guys into I was going to go up Saturday and Sunday. The guys I had scheduled for Friday, I called them. They were from Virginia. I explained the situation. They were like, "Yeah, we'll do it." They ended up driving 12 hours to go up and fish. And this was water. I never fished this particular water up there that we were going into. So I kind of started getting myself I was, a little nervous about it going into it. But it was unbelievable.
So you had customers drive 12 hours to fish with you in a place that you'd never fished before.
A place I had never fished before.
That's gutsy.
That sure is.
We caught over 150 fish that day.
That paid off.
Yep. Worth it.
I mean, 4 and 5 pound smallmouth.
No way.
It was
trip of a lifetime.
That up there, that time of the year is probably some of the best smallmouth fishing in the world. I don't see how you could have better smallmouth fishing anywhere, because if there was better fishing, people would find out about it and it would get overrun. But they regulate it up there. Like that time of the year, the only way you can go in there is if you're with a Native American. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like French Canadians will try running over from the other side of the St. Lawrence and come up in there. And if Will doesn't want them there, doesn't recognize them, he'll call tribal police and they show up in a boat and run them out.
Get out of here, Frenchie.
Yeah, dude, could you imagine that? I mean, I couldn't imagine having that kind of authority or power out on the Susquehanna. Somebody comes up on my spot and I just make a phone call and the police come and run them out.
Wow,
that's a good deal.
So anyhow, I ended up, the river, I had guys that wanted to come up on Monday then too. Another group of guys from Virginia, they came up, it blew their minds. The river flooded out down, the Susquehanna flooded out again. So there's no sense on going home. And they were like, "We'll stay up here for another day." So we fished 2 days and then they said, "We'll stay another day." They ended up staying for 3 days. Best smallmouth fishing they ever, just blew their minds. It's just mind blowing how good it is. Dude, I ended up stringing it out for 6 weeks.
Good on you.
Yeah. And then, finally I came home in the end of June and, it was going back onto the Susquehanna. I got spoiled up in New York, but the Susquehanna was at an all-time low. Fishing, it was the worst I had ever seen. It was tough. There were days over the summer where we were struggling to catch 10 fish.
Wow.
Are you seeing that?
Every day was different. We worked our butts off. I never had anybody skunk, but I was just like, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah.
And I had my theories.
Yeah,
I had some theories of, what might have happened, but I just wanted to stay quiet about it.
Yeah.
Just kind of, we were talking, I didn't want to go public and say anything. Until that freaking water level dropped and cleared up and I saw it was on the bottom, then it confirmed my suspicions of what had happened.
You're not going to say rocks, are you?
No. Are you seeing that with different species as well? Is it just bass? Or are you seeing how many muskie do you catch a year?
Not many.
Yeah.
Not many.
Is that just
I could probably
in general?
count on one hand.
Yeah.
There's just not a whole lot of muskies in this stretch.
Okay.
There's different areas of the river, different areas of the Susquehanna that I fished are packed with muskies, like an unbelievable population. But they also have high bass populations too. But I mean, there's certain areas on this main stretch that I fished, deeper areas that do have muskies. I mean, we see them every now and then, but we don't catch a whole lot of them.
Gotcha.
You might have one follow your bait, or you just see them suspended a lot of times when the water's low and clear.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I don't know what I saw when the water finally dropped and cleared up was flathead catfish everywhere, and bigger than I had ever seen before.
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
where's that location?
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I'll tell you exactly where they're at if you go catch them and take them. Any of the deeper areas, like what would have been known as like bass wintering holes. See, the problem, this is what I thought might have been going on, and why this bass population was thinning out. I don't know if you've ever heard, when you have a river rise, when the river rises, everything gets kicked up and the bass feed like crazy, and the bass fishing can be phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, they eat, they gobble up the crayfish, they gobble up the bait fish, everything starts to get concentrated in certain areas. And for years, we would, every time the river was rising, we'd get out there and you could have spectacular fishing. But since these flatheads really started taking over, I think what's going on is now when the river rises, the flatheads are binging on the smallmouth. They all get grouped up together. I know this just from what I've seen, the amount of scars on the fish, the bite marks when you get those chomp marks on either side of the fish. When you start having a high percentage of that in dirty water, and you're catching flatheads also, they would sit in the mouths of these creeks, the confluence of the creeks. Then as the bass would move in and out, none of the fish ever made it far away from the tributaries or the bigger pockets, the sheltered areas that they move into when the water gets high.
Yeah.
Bass, catfish, all that. And I think every time it went up, everything got forced back in, and they get picked off on their way in, and then they get picked off on their way out. It just was up and down and up and down. And every time it happened, the herd kept getting thinner and thinner. And just from talking to other people that were out there, man, we're catching flatheads. They're in the freaking creeks. Some guys were saying they're coming up and chasing, you have muskies chase bass sometimes, and we had it happen too in a creek mouth where a catfish, a flathead, you're reeling in a bass, and a flathead comes up after it. They were that thick in those creek mouths, and those pockets.
Yeah, catfish. I know you. Everybody knows you're a big catfisherman. Are you seeing the numbers change over the years too? I mean,
not only are the numbers changing, but the size is changing. A lot of people that might listen to this might get upset or be like, oh yeah, whatever, dude, your name's Catfish, whatever. But we've caught fish out there 50 pounds and threw them back at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday, because there's no sense in killing a monster fish that have lived that long just to get your name in a paper. We've got pictures of them with scales. So there are monster fish, and they're going to get bigger. However, the scientific proof of what's going to happen here is just like putting a boa constrictor in a cage. It'll only get as big as a cage. We're not Mississippi, and we're not the Mississippi River.
Yeah.
Our flatheads are going to top out. And when they top out, the population of flatheads will actually equalize itself out. They're not dumb enough. We're not dumb enough to shoot every deer in Pennsylvania. They will. See, and here's the thing, too. I'm not disagreeing with Joe. I absolutely agree with him. However, the numbers rising aren't what everybody say they are. They see them when the water's low, so they see them in big numbers.
Yeah.
When the water's up like that, there are other factors that are hurting the smallmouth. When the water's up, these fish, they split up. They don't want to be next to each other. They're territorial. And a lot of the bite marks that you see on these bass aren't because they're eating them. It's because they're territorial and they're trying to get them away from them. Scientific studies show that, a flathead of any size, normally a juvenile flathead will eat once every 5 days. A big flathead will eat once every 10 days. So if one flathead eats every 10 days, roughly, now this is speculation on somebody's scientific studies down south, because they have these accusations and problems in other rivers in the country. So I absolutely believe that it's a fact, because I've cut flatheads open and seen smallmouth bass in them.
Really?
Right.
Absolutely. I've also cut over channel cats, and I've found very small fingerling bass and channel cats constantly. So we talk about the St. Lawrence River, and there's some of the biggest channel cats in the world in the St. Lawrence River, but yet their bass populations are outstanding. What I think will happen, like when I was a kid till now, it's gone up and down, up and down. I do believe that there's an issue. However, I think it'll equal itself out. They're not going to deplete their food source to the point where there's only 200-300 of them left that weigh 60 pounds. They're so populated when the water's low that people panic. Now, I've been catfishing that river my entire life. I'm catching more catfish, bigger catfish. But unfortunately, what I'm not seeing is this massive 80% drop in bass like we did, in 1997, 2001. Do I think it might happen? Yeah. But flathead catfish were not the problem back then. So we have to take that scientific factor. What happened last time compared to this time? Because there was no flatheads in 1997.
I was going to say, how new is it? Like, I'm totally
what we can do about it as sportsmen, as being a catfisherman and a bass fisherman, and Joe relies on the river for part of his income, is these guys that are out bow fishing for carp. Most catfishermen will down you for shooting a flathead. I condone you. Oh my God, most bass fishermen throw them on the bank. However, if you work together and the bow fishermen do substantially take them out of the water, it will help the bass population.
Right.
But you'll never shoot all these flatheads. You just won't do it. However, there is a point, just like a deer herd, they will out-eat each. So what will happen is, if they're not regulated, they'll eat everything.
Right.
But if that's the case, they'll equal themselves out. They're not the hogs of the South that just populate and breed 4 times a year, whatever the hell it is, and kill a cornfield in one night and move on. However, that's the demons that people portray them at. They're a predatory fish that is extremely territorial. If you put your hand next to them, they will bite you. No different than a bass.
Yeah.
I think that to help Joe out and help the catfisherman out on top of that is you should shoot them with your bow. You should use them. Flathead are amazing eaters.
Eat them, yeah.
Eat them.
Now, however, saying that too, there are 100 other things that we could discuss on how to help this river. And as well as I do, we've been out in this river a lot of times and seen the amount of trash, people's pesticides that go into the water. I can't say that all these markings and these black marks and all this stuff, that has nothing to do with flathead catfish. There's something else going on. I guess my point is that I'm not sticking up for the flatheads, but there is a sustainable amount of money there for other kinds of guides, like the Catfish Queen. So she makes her money on flatheads, and it's amazing for her. So it's how you look at it. I would love to go catch 100 smallmouth a day, and I would love to go catch a 50-pound flathead sitting on my kayak at night with my brothers. If we can figure out how to make that happen, and I really think, my honest opinion, I think that is by promoting the catfishermen, promoting these guys shooting the juvenile catfish. Now, I'm talking everything that's 20 pounds and less, kill it. To keep the numbers down. But if you are floating over top of a 50-pound flathead, you have to remember that fish only eats once every 10 days. And the numbers of flatheads in the river compared to the numbers of smallmouth.
How old is that fish, too?
15 years old, 12, probably to the time they came around. To their, I mean, we're here's the thing too. We don't have the science yet because we're dealing with relatively a new species in the river. And relatively new, saying in the last 2 decades or less.
Yeah.
But scientific facts prove that you've done it yourself, Joe. I've seen it on your social media that if you dump one upside down or cut it open, they have smallmouths in them. So but I've done that with multiple other species like muskies and channel cats. And if I'm not mistaken, there are monster channel cats in the St. Lawrence. So
the difference there, I think the difference is in the water clarity.
Yes,
I don't think those catfish do the damage in clear water. I think they do the damage in dirty water.
They like to hunt in dirty water because
I mean, it's just the bass get disoriented. I mean, a bass's world is clear water. Bass want clear water. A catfish is going to thrive in dirty water.
Yep.
So when you have a high water event and everything gets jammed together, I mean, a bass's all odds are against them. And then when you get those catfish, they just chew and chew and chew. And I would hope, I hear what you're saying about, hopefully one day it balances out. But these flatheads started on the lower Susquehanna. And I remember the fish kill was the initial decline was back in 2005. The 90s were phenomenal the whole way through.
Yeah.
There was a fish kill in 2005, which was Mother Nature. It was basically a low water event during the spawn, and it got hot real quick and just stressed the fish out and whacked them the whole way up the river. We lost a ton of fish. Huge fish kill where you saw thousands. There was thousands of them dead, floating. But the lower Susquehanna, since those flatheads were introduced, the bass population down there just has been in a steady decline. Now it's to the point where you don't even waste your time. Pretty much from York Haven down, I mean, you're wasting your time going, trying to catch a smallmouth down there.
I completely agree.
And that's why I say, those things have been down there for 15 years. Those flatheads have been down there for 15 years and it never balanced itself out. I think basically what happens is they chew everything to pieces until there's nothing left to eat. And then they start migrating upriver. And that's what we have going on right now is...
When we say introduced,
but the Mississippi River is an amazing fishery for both species. So I think, do you think it's because of the size of the Susquehanna River?
Maybe the size. What really concerns me about the upper Susquehanna, like where I fish.
Are you talking about like up at Northumberland or Lewisburg?
Just pretty much when you get into natural flowing river.
Okay.
When you're not dealing with any impoundments or dammed up water. When you're dealing with what the Susquehanna looks like in its natural flow when it's low over the summer, it looks like you can walk across it.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with relatively shallow water, and then every now and then you have a dip, which over the winter, that would end up being a wintering hole.
Right.
You'll have 4 or 5 feet of water, 4 or 5 feet of water, 3 feet of water, 2 feet of water, then it'll drop down into 10 or 12 feet of water. And that's where those catfish are laying in. And that's where they're piled up, just freaking massive loads of them. And those bass use those same areas. They're moving in and out of those same areas, and especially in the wintertime. I mean, that's where those fish are supposed to go in winter. And I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard stories of the Fort Hunter wintering pool. 10 years ago, you could have 25 boats up there and everybody would catch 100 bass in a day. Now you go up there, it's loaded with catfish. Like if you go up there and jig, it's loaded with flatheads. You go up there and jig silver buddies, and I mean, you can snag as many catfish as you catch bass.
I love this communication because I would like for everybody to listen to this and let's figure it out. Do you think some commercial fishing regulations to let guys like they do for blue cats on the Potomac? Do you think some commercial fishing regulations to take some of them out would help?
The bass guys are. I would like for everybody to get along, but I don't. I think everybody. If guys were coming after I'll say it like this. So in Maine, the people in Maine say the same thing about the smallmouth. Smallmouth got into areas up there and gobble up the trout.
Right.
The trout fishermen freaking hate them.
Right.
And there's actually signs to, go around and if you catch smallmouth, get rid of them. Don't throw them back. And me being a smallmouth guy, I can't wrap my head around that. I'm like, you got to be freaking kidding me.
Right.
So I got to put myself in the cat fisherman's shoes and listen to his side of it. Like, dude, you can't be taking my catfish out. That's why I like to fish. But when you're talking about a species of fish like that that's so destructive, that the way that they multiply, the way they grow, and the way that they eat, and the way that they just take over areas of water, I just don't know. I don't know if there is a solution to it. Some of the bass guys have
Snakeheads.
Bucky, don't say the S word.
Those snakeheads.
They're coming. They'll be next, guys. I hate to rain on your parade.
Did you hear me?
What's
the
that?
flatheads will eat those? They have no.
Will they?
Yes.
Maybe they'll eat them and not the small.
Snakeheads won't go up into that free-flowing water.
No,
snakeheads. Their habitat is more similar to largemouth.
Well, nice try, Buck.
If you find an area that has a lot of largemouth in it, a lake, an impoundment, that's potential. I'm not saying that those snakeheads won't make it up onto the Susquehanna into the lakes. They will eventually. They could end up in Conowingo. They could end up in Aldred. They could end up in Long Level. They could end up really, all the way up to Lake Frederick and possibly even above, maybe even at the Pula City Island. I don't think so. I don't think they would go up that far just because, they're more in like the lily pads and the marsh. If snakeheads did come up, I don't think that would be as devastating because at least you can catch them similar to the way you catch bass. I mean, guys could kind of make a switch over. You can target them with artificial lures.
I think the problem with that comment is the fact that flatheads don't have 2,000 babies at a time twice a year. That's why snakeheads are so invasive.
Gotcha.
Is the fact that they breed on a level that no other fish does, and they have no natural predators. That's correct.
The flatheads can breed twice a year and have up to like they can drop to like 80 to 100,000 eggs. Yeah, that's what I read.
Well, here's the thing.
I don't know if they're actually breeding twice a year, but I've seen them spawning. I would imagine that they're probably only spawning once a year, and it's over the summer.
Well, I've never seen that group of numbers that you're talking about on baby flatheads, though, and I spend the majority of my summer staring straight down for crawfish where baby flatheads are. You would think I'd see big poles of them with headlamps.
Oh my God, it's ridiculous. I can shoot you pictures, which where they're piled. You gotta, if you're in a kayak, you might not see them as easy.
Sure.
You got to look for a deep hole that has wood or something going through it.
I have aircraft carrier lights on my kayak, and I'm 4 feet above the water, standing on a giant cooler. So I can bow fish off my kayak with no problem.
All right. Yeah. I don't know. Keep your eyes peeled because I'm telling you, man.
I've just never seen it, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not arguing. I've never seen it in 15 years. I've never seen more than 10 baby catfish together.
It's crazy, dude. I've seen over 100 of them together. People don't realize how many of them are up there, and there's so many in that probably 15 to 30, even 40-pound range. You got to find a deep hole, and there has to be a wood or like a log laying in the hole. And if you're out at night, maybe they're not grouped up as much. I see them during the day, like a clear, sunny day, sun high in the sky, water's clear. And they get underneath.
Are we talking about like thumb length, or what are we talking about here?
They're 15 to 30 pounds.
I have floated multiple float trips on the Juniata in the Susquehanna fishing for smallies, lots of trips. And so, we floated from like Williamsport down to Allenwood. And I guess like when you talk about these community pools and, your boat comes up, smallmouth rip out of the hole. Some of them come back, some of them run. Do you think? I think some of it's just one of my theories. I think some of the smallmouth are understanding that. Listen, this area is dangerous. Like this, we have the predators are taking over because when we did that float trip, me and Logan caught over 120 smallies apiece in a one-day trip. Now that's way north of us.
There's some truth to that, but the numbers, you see that? They're not all flatheads. There's a few carp mixed in with it too, but that pipe is long.
What time of year is that picture taken?
Over the summer, this summer when it was low and clear.
The water level was real low, so they're trying to stay in the shade. They're all packed in there. No, here's the thing, Joe. I don't want our listeners to think that we're arguing. I totally 100% agree that they're a problem. I want to figure out how both parties. Like, if I lived up north, I'd want both parties to be happy. And maybe the only way to fix it is to take out.
Completely go away. I don't want them to have, nothing left to catch. But when they're in there in those kind of numbers and the bass population's just freaking plummeting.
Yeah.
I mean, basically this is what's going to happen. It's not, I've already formulated a plan B, going to the St. Lawrence.
Sure. You shouldn't have to do that,
But I feel bad for these local businesses. Like, you have local tackle shops, you have local boat manufacturers. The Susquehanna draws in a huge crowd of people. And if this upper Susquehanna takes a dump from this Flathead invasion, the way the lower Susquehanna took a dump from the Flathead invasion, I mean, it's going to hurt big time. Like, some of the bigger tackle shops that are selling all across the country, they might be all right, but these little mom and pop shops, like in the sticks, like different areas, Perry County, they've complained to me a bunch this past year. Like, we need to get together and do something about this. We know this is a huge problem. What can we do?
It's the same principle in Pennsylvania of people complaining about coyotes.
I honestly don't know what the solution is. I hope a lot of people listen to this and do, like you said, if you do catch those smaller fish, harvest them. Yes. Maybe it'll help make your bigger ones bigger. But eventually these things are they're going to chew everything to pieces to the point where they could chew the river to the pieces to where they have to continue migrating further and further upriver, where, they end up way up the North Branch or end up the West Branch and, get stopped at the Williamsport Dam, but they could make it all the way up the North Branch to freaking New York. I think that's what could end up happening. And maybe at that point,
well, weather's a factor too.
It could balance itself out, but it pisses me off that the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission lifted the regulations on no fishing during the spawn this past year. They couldn't have picked the worst year for it. I mean, the alarm is sounding off. Like, if you're going to do something to save the fishery, you got to do it now.
No, you're already behind the 8 ball. You should have done it by now. Right? I do agree with that.
They should have never removed those regulations. I mean, that's a huge problem in itself. We could talk about that.
Yeah.
That I noticed in 2017, 2018, just the fishing pressure alone, like by the end of April, I was ready for it to close down just to get the pack of people off the fish. I knew what was going to happen if they did open it up. Well, this is what I thought was going to happen. I thought, these people that come up here and beat on these fish are going to beat the snot out of them the whole way through the spawn. It's the easiest time of the year to catch them. They're going to beat on them and beat on them and beat on them until they can't catch them anymore. And they're not going to go home until they're not going to leave. They're not going to quit coming up here until these fish just have had the absolute snot beat out of them and they're uncatchable. And then we're going to roll around into summer and we're not going to be able to catch anything. The way it used to be with the closed season, you protected them during the spawn, there's nothing wrong with that. And then at least when it opened back up, the third Saturday in June, they had gotten a break and then we had spectacular fishing throughout the summer. I think as long as they leave it open and guys are beating on them, the summer is going to fish tough. I mean, it's not going to be easy. I just think, like, when you have a gem of a fishery like the Susquehanna, just trophy smallmouth waters, trophy fishing waters, do everything you can to protect it, to make, just make it last. Be responsible with it. The most responsible. All right. So the flathead population is probably taking a hit on them. That's going to be hard to conquer. Pollution is probably, that's causing issues. Nobody's going to do anything about the pollution. That's too expensive to fix. They've been talking about doing that for years. The only thing that they can really do to protect those fish out of the three things I just mentioned, that we've talked about so far, is protect these fish during the spawn. If you care about this fishery and you care about these businesses that count on this fishery, you got to protect these freaking fish. I mean, the alarm is sounding off. I'm telling you, we are missing a lot of fish. But like, some people are speculating up to 70%. We've lost 70% of the fish over the past year and a half. Yes, I'm telling you, it is bad.
Over the last year and a half.
Yes, it's bad. It is bad. The people that spend a lot of time out there know how bad it is. It's bad.
Joe,
bad.
You've said two things here that I think are interesting when you put them together. a lot of high water over the last year and a half and pollution. And we have a long stretch of the Susquehanna in this part of the Susquehanna where municipalities have outdated water processing
horribly.
And overflow. And I'm going to get my rust belt out for a second here.
Oh boy.
Because
here we go.
Because
that's always being improved, though, and I know that from the field I used to work in. I've worked in the plumbing field, and those sewage treatment plants are constantly being updated.
All right, why do we still have to overflow when it's too much?
Yeah,
when they
that's
know
a problem.
it, and now they're taxing everybody because you have too much concrete, and if you have this much concrete and asphalt on your property, you have to pay this amount of water flow off tax.
This is an outdoor show, Buck.
I know, but what I'm getting at is they're generating funds and they're still not fixing it. And until somebody realize it's not going to fix itself until people make them.
There's smacks on the wrist for people that are dumping.
See, you can't tell me that it's just flathead catfish. With this other correlation, we're dumping crap, literally crap.
Yeah, but that's always been like that. It's always been like that. I think the water quality could be better now than it was 15 years ago, just because of the updates that have been done.
But then, explain me this. Then what's with all the what's all these sores on these smallmouth?
The water quality is not great. I mean, they get injuries. Something opens them up and they get an infection.
And my point is,
but I saw that up in New York. I saw that up on the St. Lawrence in New York.
My point is I don't think we have enough research to point a finger at one thing. No. I think we have a combination of things in action now.
There is a combination of things. But what I can tell you is those areas that I'm talking about that have those crazy numbers of flatheads, that wasn't there before. And the way that they would post up in the creeks, all right, so 2011, I don't know if the annual water flow, the rain amount was higher than 2018, but I know that we had a lot of high water in 2011. In the end of March, the river on the Susquehanna gauge went over 20 feet. It came down a little bit, then it went back up again. It was high all spring. It came down over the summer, and then September of 2011, it went up to 26 feet with Hurricane Lee. So we had two high water events that year that went way, way, way over, what happened in 2018. And it dropped, came down to, a normal level, and fishing was phenomenal. Never skipped a beat. With high water in previous years the way it did this past year since this flathead invasion.
Joe, is Fish Commission
flatheads are a common denominator to any river system that's had a huge decline in smallmouth, red eye, different brim panfish, suckers, fall fish. I talk to people, I take people fishing from all over the country, and when I tell them that there's flatheads in this water now, they're like, oh my God, you got to be kidding. I mean, and then they'll tell me a story about, a river back their way that, used to be phenomenal fishing for either panfish or smallmouth or spots or whatever. Those flatheads get in water, a river system, and they just freaking decimate it.
When we say they were introduced, what does that mean? 20 years ago they were introduced. Did they just get in here, or did we?
Well, it started on the lower Susquehanna, and even back in 2010, 2011, I remember having conversations with people because we knew back then that the lower Susquehanna there was a huge decline in the smallmouth fishing pretty much from York Haven Dam down. It was starting. And we knew it was the flatheads. When I was a kid, you used to be able to go out in Columbia, Marietta, and not know what you're doing and catch 30, 40 fish a night. And a ton of people were doing it. Back then, there was no flatheads. Those flatheads were probably introduced back, I don't know how they got here. Nobody really knows how they got here, but it started in the early 2000s, I believe.
Wow.
Okay.
And they just decimated it, dude. Just freaking. It is a waste of your time to go down there and try and catch a bass.
I don't agree with that. I spent 2 trips from Gut Road down to the Route 30 bridge last year. We caught over 100 bass both times. That was in June. So I'm trying to believe you and understand. I'm not arguing, but every time that I go down there flathead fishing, I smallmouth fish on topwater before nighttime. So
yeah, I mean, that just blows my mind because everybody I talk to, I don't even wait. The last time I went down there one time in 2019. And after hearing about how bad it was, I was like, dude, you guys suck. There's no way that it's as bad as what you're saying. I mean, there's no freaking way it's as bad as what you're saying. And I went down there and dude, it blew my mind how bad it was. And it was in May when we should have clobbered them. I mean, guys go out at night bow fishing and stuff, and they tell me they see carp and catfish and quillback, and they hardly see any bass, down there when they're bow fishing.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to put it all together. Just going off our own personal trips.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't just make it up. Like this is the conclusion that I've come to from talking to a ton of people and just with my experience out, being out there. I don't know. I wish that we weren't going through this at all.
Right.
But since we are going through it and knowing the history of the lower Susquehanna and the state that it's in right now, and now seeing what's moved into this upper Susquehanna and seeing this huge decline in bass, I mean, that picture that I showed you, I mean, there's spots all over the place up there. When that sun gets high in the sky, those catfish, if there's a log or a pipe or something like that or a big boulder, I mean, they will just freaking pile in like crazy numbers of them, and they're big.
Well, here's some things that I think that I can help with actually working. I'm trying to fix it in my head, and I've done some work with not the Fish Commission, but with some fish committees. I've done shock studies. So what I honestly believe should happen if everybody wants to work together and help it is you can be a amazing resource for science and fix the problem. And guys like you is we should create an app for the Fish Commission, that every time that you go over one of these piles of big fish that you should mark it. And it's only the only person that can see this app would be the committee, whoever's going to go out and commercial trap them, shoot them, whatever they need to do, even if it's in secret. But if you're finding these hot spots of record numbers, then that needs to be knowledge of the people. Those spots need to be knowledge of the people. Like I said, I spend half my lifetime on that river. I'm not seeing what you're seeing, so I don't know these spots.
That was part of my point in wanting to do this podcast and just kind of talk about it more, because people don't want to hear this. I tried talking about this and telling people about this, the people that could do something and, go out and do research and, point them into these areas. If you don't believe me, come out, I'll show you where they're at.
Right.
And they just have no interest in it. They don't want to hear it.
It makes it tough when people don't want to listen, Joe. It does.
They don't want to. I'm like, the guys that go out and catch them are using 12-inch bluegills. What do you think these fish eat? I mean, I know what they eat because I catch them and I throw them in my live well. They eat more crayfish than anything. But I'd say 1 out of every 5 that I throw in my live well is puking up some kind of fish, whether it's, those flatheads, there's stuff in that river that you don't even realize is in that river. Basically, if you want to find out what's in that river, you freaking catch a flathead and throw it in your live well, and he's going to show you what's in the river because they're eating everything. They eat frogs, they eat turtles, they eat panfish, they eat walleye, they eat other catfish. And when I'm having these conversations with these people and they're telling me, they don't do anything, they don't eat fish, I'm like,
I think nobody's going to listen to either side unless both sides come together and there's some scientific proof of what numbers there are of actual fish versus fish.
Like, people think I'm full of crap when I tell them the numbers of them. Like, I wouldn't just be pulling this out of my. I wish that I wouldn't have. I wouldn't. I've seen it. Sure. I know what's in there. It's mind-boggling, and that's why, like, when I said I didn't want to go out and say anything about this until.
No, we're good.
I have my theories of what it could have been, but once that water actually dropped this past summer to that low level where you can see the bottom, crystal clear water, and I seen what was laying in those holes and how big they were and how many of them there were. I was like, well, there you go.
Well, Joe, we appreciate you. I'm running up on time, but I want to leave you with a final thought here is, I so appreciate you not only coming on the show again, and we love talking to you. However,
Right.
bringing some of this to light, because
it's good.
When you were sending me the picture, I had a bit of an audio static earlier, but I was saying that I also see another problem in Pennsylvania, that there's all these guys complaining about coyotes. We don't see them, but I see them, and there's dead fawns and blah, blah, blah. But nobody wants to go out at night and do the work to actually hunt coyotes because they're hard to hunt. Nobody wants to go out at night and shoot flatheads all night because they're slimy and disgusting, and most people don't eat them. So if guys want to go out and help solve the problem, I think going out and actually shooting some coyotes or shooting some flatheads is one good step in the right direction. And if there's anything we could take away positive tonight is, I think that you and everybody else that sees the problem areas can help out by, they don't want to listen. So start taking your GoPro and start taking pictures and dumping them on their lap. And I'll do it myself to help you out too, because I have a problem. I'm both in love with catfishing, and I absolutely love smallmouth fishing. Sure. Mm-hmm. So I like to fight both sides, but at the same time, something's going on. We have to stoke this fire now.
Dexterous.
Yeah, Bucky.
Everybody else is just sitting back laughing at us.
Well, Bucky don't care. He doesn't come out kayak fishing. His knee hurts.
I'm saying you're dexterous.
I don't know what to say. My closing thoughts would be, I would like to see them reinstate the closure during the spawn.
Good. Yeah.
I mean, what are they going to do when this thing really hits rock bottom? Then what are you going to do at that point? What are you going to do?
If people don't listen to guys like you that spend their life on the water, who are they going to listen to? So I appreciate it, man. I appreciate your knowledge. Mm-hmm. I got so much to sit back tonight and take in and try to figure out how I can help as a sportsman, because it's my river too.
Right.
And if that means when I'm out catfishing, that means keeping the ones I'm catching, then that's what it means. And I might start just doing that now. So, not that it might help with record numbers, but here's the thing. Here's the thing people don't understand too. As a commercial fishery, as part of maybe some of the solution, like I said they do with blue cats on the Potomac, small flatheads. If you build the cages correctly and you catch the smaller ones, they are amazing to eat. People don't get that. It's an amazing eater.
I love them.
There is a market there for them where the Game Commission could make some money. So, or the Fish Commission, I keep forgetting we have two in Pennsylvania.
We do.
So, Joe, thank you so much.
Joe,
I appreciate it.
So people can keep up with what you're posting and what's going on this summer when the water drops. How can people follow you?
Social media, Instagram is Susquehanna Smallmouth Guide, Joe Raymond, or on Facebook, just my name, Joe Raymond. I have a business page for my guide service, Susquehanna Smallmouth Guides also. I'm not as active on there. I might try and do a better job on there this year. I just juggling around 3 social media accounts on my own and then guide and do everything else I'm doing. I just kind of get burnt out on the social media stuff. But Instagram, I do put the most content on. I put the most content on there. But either one, my personal Facebook page or Instagram page.
I will say that your Instagram page is responsible for probably a lack of 2 hours worth of work per week that I don't get done. So
when the fishing's going on, right. Yeah. I apologize. I hear that all the time. I think I've actually gotten people fired from their jobs.
And I know that because you do it every day, you do see a drop in numbers, but the action on your Instagram page could fool me. So good on you.
You might have been confused. Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, you're right. It's still, I should also say this in closing thoughts, because I don't want to make it sound like the Susquehanna is a desolate, dead water. It's not there yet. It's still the best smallmouth fishing in the area.
Sure.
It's better than anywhere else in the area.
Mm-hmm. You love fishing, and you love fishing smallmouth bass, and you're passionate about it, and I love it. I love the energy that you put out with it. It's awesome. Thank you, everybody. Get over there to Susquehanna.
This is hard hitting. It's one of the more hard hitting topics we've ever explored. Mm-hmm. And so
it was a bit edgy. It's edgy for us, really. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
And as soon as at the beginning of the podcast, when you said that you were in the catfish mafia or whatever, I was like, oh God.
Yeah, I knew we were going to have
This is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
And I want to be fair about it. I hope we can figure it out.
Amen. We can, and you know what I've known? We can accomplish anything as long as we have love and bibs. Yeah.
Amen.
Yep.
Love and what?
Love and bibs.
It's a throw.
It's an old throwback
to an old episode.
Old episode. But we accomplish a lot with love and bibs, though, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
And if if you guys are interested in any of those back episodes, Stevie, how can people?
Oh, hop on over to RuttenRiverPursuits.com. Check us out on all the social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, by searching Rutten River Pursuits. Download all our episodes on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts,
and Spotify.
I love them iHeartRadios. Alrighty, everybody.
Guys.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Hey, have a good night, guys. Thanks.
You too, buddy.
See ya.
Ring 'em weightless.
Peace.
And I picked his brain that entire time. Just about his, because I found
like, how can I get married in the maritime?
Well, but I just found it fascinating, and he.
See
can
or
you
smell
marry
or
people
touch.
next to an X-ray machine?
I can marry somebody while they're being irradiated. And that's the only time.
You have people's lives in your hands.
It's very, very impressive to be called captain.
And then.
So we fished 2 days, and then they said, we'll stay another day. They ended up staying for 3 days. Best smallmouth fishing they ever, just blew their minds. It's just mind-blowing how good it is. Dude, I ended up stringing it out for 6 weeks.
Good on you.